Everybody has a story to tell. Are you ready to tell yours? Good day, learners. I hope you had a lot of fun learning poetry. We now move to writing fiction, and in this week's lesson and activity sheets, we will be talking about elements and literary techniques on writing fiction. Fiction writing is a way to make sense or make a story out of the events and experiences in our life. Loss, sadness, depression, anxiety, hope, love. But in order to do that, we need to familiarize ourselves with the elements and techniques on how to write them. My name is Crystal Reyes. Shall we begin? Every story is made up of both events and characters. The setting, the characters, the plot, the conflict are all parts of a story. Then we have the point of view and theme, and all of these make up the elements of a short story. Whether it's underwater or on top of the world, the galaxies or the depths of Tartarus, Manila or Bontoc, setting is one of the most important literary elements in a story writing. The when and where of a story creates a believable world for the characters and the readers as well. It can be a real-time period, a geographical location, a fictional world, or an unfamiliar time. It also includes the physical landscape, the climate, weather, and the societal and cultural backgrounds. For example, in J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter, the setting is in a school for witchcraft and wizardry, Hogwarts, so it shows ghosts and capes and floating candles and mysterious corridors, which will all give you the setting. Whatever story you are making, characters are very crucial. They are core to a great storytelling. You can have a protagonist who is the main character, like Katniss Everdeen in the story The Hunger Games. The antagonist is the villain in the story, like the Volturi in The Twilight. Characters can also be classified as dynamic or round, and static or flat. A dynamic character is one who changes over the course of the story, while a static character does not. He may have fixed set of personality traits. The plot is what happens in a story. At its core, plot structure has three parts: a beginning, middle, and end. Let me introduce you the three kinds of plot, starting from the linear plot, which originated from German novelist Gustav Freytag. This is the pyramid. The story begins in the exposition. Once the story has begun, it is important to create tension. You must create obstacles, and this happens in the rising action. Then the highest part of the story is the climax. Was the obstacle overcome? Did the hero win? All these actions happen in the climax, which is then followed by a falling action. The hero wins and heads towards the ending or resolution. The next one is the modular plot. In contrast to the linear plot, the modular plot is not arranged chronologically. The story can begin in media res, that is, in the middle part of the story. It can begin in the conflict, or in the end of the story, then incorporate a backstory or flashback. You will see more of these in the techniques that we will tackle later in this video. Finally, the episodic plot. These follow many actions or events chapter by chapter. These are often seen in many television shows. Examples include the famous Korean novellas that are popular nowadays. Another element is the conflict. This is also found in the plot of the story, and it is an important key to successful storytelling. It is the element that kicks off the action and gets the story started. There are two types of conflict: the external and internal conflict. Internal conflict happens when a character struggles within himself. The character must make some decision, must overcome pain, or quiet his temper, or resist an urge. Man versus self is the only conflict under internal conflict. This is most often seen when a character faces mixed emotions over his or her actions, or a decision that has to be made. There are various kinds that fall under external conflict. The first one is man versus man. So this happens when the leading character struggles with his physical strength against other men, and he struggles with another character. An example would be Marvel stories, in which we can observe superheroes fighting off villains in the story, like Spider-Man versus Centipede or the Avengers versus Thanos. The second one is man versus circumstances. The leading character struggles against fate or the circumstances of life facing him or her. For example, a character is not able to marry the love of his life, who is the daughter of the king, because he comes from a poor family. The third is man versus nature. A character struggles with the force of nature. It can be a natural disaster or a desolation, a weather disturbance, or a fierce animal. An example would be the movie Anaconda, which is about a National Geographic film crew who was taken hostage by an insane hunter who forces them along on his quest to capture the world's largest and deadliest snake. Man versus society is a kind of conflict where a character or a group of characters fight against the society in which they live. The character fights against social traditions or rules, like fight for freedom, rights, or for a cause. Society becomes a character of its own. It is usually used to comment on positive or negative aspects for real society. In A Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, she imagines a future America as a fundamentalist society called Gilead, in which certain women who have the now rare ability to have children are deemed handmaids and are allocated to upper-class families as reproductive slaves. All citizens' rights are suspended, and women in particular do not have the right to read, write, or handle money. Atwood's chilling tale is a good example of a character versus society conflict. The fifth kind of conflict is man versus supernatural, which is a conflict between a character and something that is not normal in some ways. Supernatural elements include ghosts, omens, and superstitions. One example for this conflict is Homer's Odysseus, which talks about a man who wants to go back to his family after the war, but is hindered by the gods. Other examples include zombie stories. And the last one is man versus fate. This type of conflict occurs when a character is trapped by an inevitable destiny, freedom, and fate. This is related to the conflict man versus supernatural. Point of view is the eye or narrative voice through which you tell a story. When you write a story, you must decide who is telling the story and to whom they are telling it. Let's have third-person point of view. The author is narrating a story about the characters and refers to them with third-person pronouns like he, she, they. This point of view is subdivided into third-person omniscient and third-person limited. Third-person point of view is sometimes referred to as third-person POV. So, what is the difference between third-person omniscient and third-person limited? The omniscient narrator knows everything about the story and its characters. This third-person narrator can enter anyone's mind, move freely through time, and give the reader their own opinions and observations as well as those of the characters. This narrator also knows more than the characters. Think of the omniscient narrator as having a God's eye view of the characters. The third-person limited point of view is when an author sticks closely to one character but remains in third person. This style gives you the ability to be inside a character's thoughts, feelings, and sensations, which can give readers a deeper experience of character and scene. And then, the first-person point of view. In first-person point of view, one of the characters is narrating the story. This is generally revealed by the I sentence construction and relies on first-person pronouns. The reader assumes that this character is closely related to the story's action, either a main character or someone close to the protagonist. A story theme is a broad conceptual philosophy that an author wishes to convey through their literary work. To extract the story's theme, a reader must go beneath the surface of the action that's described on the page. You might be tempted to equate a primary theme with the moral of the story. Yet, while these literary concepts are certainly related, they are not quite synonymous. A book's moral is a lesson the author wishes to impart upon their audience. By contrast, a book's theme is not so much its lesson as it is an idea the author hopes the audience will mine for deeper meaning. For example, one famous theme is good triumphs over evil in the end. This is a common theme that has existed over the course of human storytelling. Other popular themes include true love conquers all, or humans must bow before nature. When writing your story or novel, you can draw from the list of themes, or you can pick your own.
So, how are we going to write the story? There are techniques, my dear students. When writing fiction, it is advised that you make use of these techniques so that you will make your story more engaging, thrilling, and interesting.
A literary device is a technique that shapes narrative to produce an effect on the reader. It is a literary or linguistic technique that produces a special effect, especially a figure of speech, narrative style, or plot mechanism. Let's have the following. For dream sequence, it composes of a series of dreams which allows the character to see events that occur or have occurred in another time. An example would be A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. It is a play about a mean-spirited and selfish old man, Ebenezer Scrooge, who hates Christmas. Ebenezer Scrooge had a series of dreams which allowed him to see the events that happened in another time with the help of the Christmas ghosts of the past, present, and future, and led him to change his attitude. The second Another technique is analepsis or flashback, which prevents events from before the current time frame. Flashbacks are usually presented as characters' memories and are used to explain their background. An example would be the Titanic. The story used Rose, the main character, to tell the events that happened to Titanic. Another would be The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Fitzgerald begins his novel with something like this. In my younger and more vulnerable years, my father gave me some advice that I've been turning over in my head ever since. So there, he uses flashback in the first scene of the first chapter to kick off his story. The third technique is prolepsis or flash forward. While analepsis presents memories from the past, prolepsis presents events that will occur in the future. An example would be Final Destination, where the character Alex Browning is embarking on a trip to Paris. Alex experiences a premonition. He sees the plane explode moments after leaving the ground. Alex insists that everyone get off the plane, and 7 people, including Alex, are forced to disembark. All watch as the plane actually explodes in a fireball. The fourth technique is prophecy. It is often used in science fiction to underline their futuristic structures. Hence, this is related to prolepsis. An example would be Breaking Dawn's final rival scene between the Volturi and Belle Swan and Edward Cullen's family. Alice, who has a premonitional supernatural, presented the prophecy, the possible events that can happen once the action will be continued. And the last technique is foreshadowing. This is a premonition, much like a flash forward, but only hints at the future. In Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, for instance, the author J.K. Rowling makes a point of describing Professor Quirrell's turban and noting Harry's curiosity about it. Only later, at the end of the story, do we discover that Quirrell's turban conceals his possession by the evil Lord Voldemort.
Learning to write fiction can be incredibly rewarding and an exciting journey. Good luck answering the exercises in your learning activity sheet. My name is Crystal Reyes saying, the world wants to hear your story. Go ahead and tell them. Kayam sa, creative writer.